Good morning. It's Pop again, Dennis Murray. Today is Popcast 30. I'm kind of excited about that. They're getting harder to do, I must say. I used to be able to spend a relatively short time preparing for each one, but now I have to spend a number of hours for 5 or 10 minutes. But you really kind of got to organize your thoughts. And so today I have on a new shirt. It's new to you. I've owned it for some years, but I thought, oh, what the heck? This is my celebratory garb for today. Um, I just wanted to chuckle because I forgot a couple days ago. I guess it was yesterday. Time flies. Um, I was thinking of talking about whether uh, what Jung thought about whether the soul is immortal. And I made a list of a lot of different pages in Jung's collected works, which is 20 volumes. And I was fortunate enough to buy a set of the collected works a long time ago when it was available in paperback. And so I went through lots of pages of Jung, and you can tell he says, well, you can't prove it, obviously. That he says forthrightly and plainly in a number of places. But it's difficult to tell what he exactly personally felt about whether or not the soul was immortal. And it's an example of how difficult it is to make sense of life. Um, Jung wrote profusely for a very long and busy career. And his 20 volumes, I mean, this is obviously a small part, the rest is on the bottom shelf over behind. Um, there's a lot of different times when he spoke on the same subjects, and he didn't always use the same words. He didn't always have the same ideas. He aged, he grew, he changed. And he refused to go back and write a sort of a final compendium of what Jung thinks about each subject, because he said, the subjects are complicated, my thoughts are complicated. Let's leave it at that. Um, so it's a good illustration of life, and it's a good illustration of what we were talking about yesterday and today, how difficult it is to imagine wanting to be in the middle with people whose values and ideas are so hugely different from your own. You really want to be in the middle with white racists? Do you really want to be in the middle with somebody who's homophobic or xenophobic, a nativist, somebody who really thinks that the only proper way to, you know, um, raise a family is with a very, very harsh hand, or the only way to be a member of society is to leave everybody to sink or swim on his own, no help given. Um, in the key in all those questions is that we're talking about a person. And so the answer to all those questions is yes, I want to be in a fruitful relation with that person, which means I invite them into the middle. It's their choice whether they want to enter the middle. Um, if they have refreshed their sense of awe and connection and still interpret the best way to live that sense of awe and connection is harshly is by things like racism and homophobism and xenophobism, um, then it's not up to me to judge the the moral quality of their thinking process. Um, but I can both at the same time welcome them into the middle and indicate that I would very much like to have a fruitful relation with them, while also just saying, I understand your thoughts and values and ideas came from your own attempt to process what it means to live the awe. But I really don't agree with the conclusions that you've reached that um, these various things that we were just talking about a moment ago that you happen to believe are correct. That it just seems to me that that's not how I interpreted it, and I want you to know that I welcome you, but I don't agree or accept with your interpretations of what it takes to live all. But the key bottom line is if your highest value is each other, and it seems that our psychology is calling us to that as the highest value, then the fact that in the process of trying to figure out how to live each other, there are disagreements so bizarre and extreme. Nonetheless, the disagreements are not disqualifications to being in the middle, to being in a fruitful relation with everybody else. And boy, that's hard to take. It's also hard to live. And of course, it can't be proven. It it's something that I think is wisdom. It took me a long time to reach that conclusion. Um, and once again, and very importantly, I'm not asking you to accept my wisdom based on some authority I have. I don't, I don't have any degrees in wisdom. I don't have, obviously, from the size of my body. I don't use a lot of wisdom in my food choices and exercise choices. Um, so I'm hardly a paragon of wisdom, you know. I have white hair, okay, so I give you that. But and I'm a nice person, okay. So I got two. But that's a 2 out of 100, 2 out of 10. I don't know. But I am sincerely suggesting that you will find it in your uh, really, you will find it very valuable to yourself to go back and revisit your awe and to see if you think in your wisdom that your experience of awe is calling you to each other as a primary value, even greater than these other values like kindness and care and concern and welcoming of, you know, all instead of being biased or prejudiced against some. And if you find that, then you'll try to live it and you will find it very difficult, hard to prove, hard to explain to yourself and others. And there's a biblical reference, obviously, isn't there? There's always a biblical reference. That's why the Bible is so worth reading, regardless of your religious orientation. Um, there's an awful lot of wisdom in there, hard-won wisdom from a people who struggled a long time in the case of the Old Testament, and some wonderful restatement of Old Testament values in the New Testament, including that Christ hung out with people that others were offended that he hung out with. Um, so let's not, forget that there are some other sources of insight into these kinds of matters than your own experience of your own awe. You can look to biblical wisdom. You can look to other wisdom literature, um, etc. But eventually, you have to come to some kind of decision about what you think about these things, and you have to try to figure out how that means you can carry them out. Um, and I got to tell you, it's even harder to practice than it is to preach, and it was hard to think about, but it's even harder to practice. lives, and I fail very often. Um, and okay, so more tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye. Happy 30th episode.